you read so much about the food and beverage industry right now that with plant-based and keto and everything else that's going on, that you would think it's an easy industry to be successful in, and because there's so many new brands launching. Yes, there's a lot of access to capital that there wasn't 20 years ago, but it's a very challenging and very competitive, and grocery especially is a very expensive market to launch in. So I think one of the myths there is that it's easy to be successful in this industry, and it's very challenging, and it's even more challenging to build a brand that lasts a lifetime. So longevity is not um, good to a lot of food and beverage brands. You see some that come on quickly, very successful in the beginning, and then they're gone.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Expert. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great expert on the podcast, Jeremy Smith. And Jeremy's going to be talking about a little bit about experience, particularly in the food and beverage industry, which is a lot of areas where people tend to have different products. And a part of that will be talking a little bit about picking the right brands, or how you go about picking the brands, what the strategy is for companies like Costco and others, and how you position yourself and how you dig down into the brands. Maybe talk a little bit about what good leadership and good teams mean versus just a great product. In other words, does it matter if it's a good team if you have a great product, or if you have a great team, does it matter if you have a good product? And talk a little bit about that, as well as maybe scaling a business, and then also how to pitch a product successfully. So with that much as a run through of a bit of what we're hopeful to talk about today, welcome on the podcast, Jeremy.
Thank you. Good to be on again.
Absolutely. And for those of you that didn't catch it, we had Jeremy on earlier, the other podcast series that we do, the Inventive Journey podcast series. So if you definitely invite everybody to go and check him out there and catch his episode if you want to learn a little bit more about Jeremy's background. But for today, for those that either don't have time or didn't catch the other episode, or say, hey, I just want to hear the expertise, introduce yourself a bit to the audience, let us everybody know a little bit about why you have experience in this area.
Yeah, so we work with food and beverage brands to help them get into Costco. That's the only retailer we work with. We have worked with Sam's Club and BJ's in the past, but we're just focused on Costco. So it could be any size company, as little as $1 million a year in sales, all the way up to $1 billion in sales.
Awesome. No, and that sounds like an interesting company, and one that certainly could help a lot of people out. So, well, with that, so now let's dive into a bit of the area of expertise. And one of the things that I'm sure will be of interest to people, especially if you're in the food and beverage industry, but even in the industry in general, and you're trying to get into businesses like a Costco or a Walmart or others that are looking, whether it's beverages or other products, is to kind of how they go about positioning their product, or how they go about positioning themselves for success. And so, in that position, what is the criteria, that ways that they go about deciding, and same with you and helping to craft that, what products are good, or which ones should work, or what should they focus on, or kind of are some ideas as to how to go about tackling that?
Yeah, so, obviously I've been doing this for 23 years, and a lot has changed. So, a lot of this has to do with, the type of brands, what category they're in. Obviously, plant-based category right now, whether you're in food or beverage, is very hot. Keto is still popular, but I think plant-based overall is driving a lot of the food and beverage category. And, how we look at it over the years is we've evolved our strategy in helping these brands get into Costco and get into, get on the shelf, is to really focus on the teams that are running the company. We used to look at product as most important, Now it's the team because we just had too many people that would come to us with great ideas, unbelievable products, but no ability to execute. And when I say execute, that means from either running their own plant to working with a co-packer, sourcing ingredients, just, really struggled with that. And so, sometimes we'll even take an inferior product over a better one if the team excels with the inferior product because they have the ability and the experience to get across the finish line, as to where sometimes people that are coming in for the first time really don't know what they're getting into. So they assume they can do something, which is, it's great that they're very positive, but when you get in with a retailer like Costco, who's very particular, they can eat you alive. So it's really important that brands understand that you really have to be able to move at the speed of Costco when you want to work with a retailer like that. Same thing with Walmart.
Now, let me just
Walmart.
or dive in, just ask one question. I think you hit on two different things, and maybe we can explore both of those a bit. One is the actual product itself. In other words, I'm sure that if it was absolute terrible product, even if you have a great team, if it's a really bad product, probably still not going to get in the store, but vice versa, you say, even if it's not as good as maybe some other products out there, but they have a great team, they can get into the store. So there's kind of that dichotomy of one is what is a product itself and what can set that up for success, or what should you be thinking about? And then also what is it about the team, or those that will, even if you don't have as good of strong a product on one side, that you can have a good chance of success with a good team. So maybe breaking that out, focusing on the product first, and then we'll jump to the team second.
Sure.
What is it on the product? Or in other words, what are some of the things that people are saying, hey, I have a food and beverage, or even I'm just going to go and try and pitch Costco or Walmart or other, big box stores to get my product in. How should they be thinking about, from a product perspective, what should they be thinking about?
Well, when we look at the product, we're looking for something we call DUE, which means that the product has attributes that are disruptive, unique, and exclusive. Doesn't mean they have to be the only one in the category, but something unique about it. So, something that is unique and exclusive could be um, a bakery has a cookie that they make, and it's based on an old style European recipe. And the exclusivity is how much, the recipe itself and the process with which it's made makes it different than how traditional cookies are made. So you've got this incredible taste. We worked many years ago with a company called Sugar Bowl Bakery, and they had a palmier, and it's, palmiers are elephant ear shaped cookies. And the thing that was unique about them that set them apart was A, they were using butter, and B, they had a special unique process for um, mixing the palmier that gave it a much richer and deeper taste. And so that set it apart from most of the other ones, which tasted too sugary and not rich enough. And so those it can be something as simple as that in the product, or it can be more complicated, like, with someone like Chobani, how they strain their the whey protein that comes from the milk when you're making Greek yogurt. So they're unique to each company, but they're similar in the how what their approach is, and they set themselves apart in a way that makes it different. Because otherwise, if you don't have that, then it really just comes down to price and whoever has the lowest price, and you don't want to play that game.
Let me just kind of follow up with, and I think that's definitely insightful. So in my mind, and you can definitely correct me because you're the expert where I'm wrong, but there, a couple of things with the product. One is especially in food and beverage, is the taste or the product itself. In other words, does it taste good? Does it, have good quality? Are people going to like it and want to repeat buying it? Then there is also the packaging, right? And sometimes the packaging almost sells the product sometimes better than the product itself. In other words, you can have a great product and terrible packaging, and nobody will pick it up off the shelf because they don't know what it is or it doesn't look appealing. So how do you weigh, or, and I get you should focus on all of them, but if you're looking at what is more important, is it getting a really solid packaging that conveys the value of your product and what it is and why you should buy it, or is it more on, hey, focus first on the in the food and beverage, the taste or the quality of the product, and then let the packaging kind of come in second? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think there's a. I think they're both tied for first. Yeah, the packaging has to communicate the brand story because that's the first interaction that a consumer is going to have with it. It also lays the ground for the expectations of what the consumer um, is expecting prior to tasting the product, because that's an important part of the point with brands is that you've got to communicate on that level and grab that consumer in and pull them in, and that consumer has to understand, is it immediately when they see the packaging, it either turns them on or it turns them off. It's really simple. It takes about a 3 to 7 second time period at the most for them to make a decision on whether they're even going to try it. So the packaging is incredibly important, which then you have to deliver on the product experience, because if someone, let's say you've got a beverage that has the flavors Meyer lemon, well, you're going to have that first expectation of, oh, who is this brand? Who is the company? Wow, I love the story. Now the question becomes, in a specific flavor like a Meyer lemon, does it really taste like a Meyer lemon, or has the company misstepped on that and it tastes too sweet or too different? So all of those things go together, but I can't stress enough how important package design is, good package design, and it costs money, but it's worth every penny. But you cannot start working on your package design until you've got your story on your brand. And it doesn't matter whether you're in food or beverage or you're selling Michelin tires. You've got to get your story straight, because if there's inconsistencies between what you say as an entrepreneur out in public, or your packaging conveys a completely different message than what's on your website, consumers are going to get confused. And when they get confused, they generally move towards the negative on your brand.
No, I think that certainly makes sense. Now, I'm and half of this is just as much curiosity as anything else. Is on the packaging, is it? And I'm assuming, but I don't know that it maybe the taste of the public and the consumers may evolve over a long period of time. But as of you think of today, is it more of the conveying the story of your product? Is it conveying what the product is? Is it simple? Is it certain color schemes? Kind of, I'm sure it's different for every product and, how you want to convey it. But if you're thinking kind of as core principles and saying, okay, I've got a rock solid, great product, tastes good, or, people are going to want it. Once they actually, pick it up and try it, they're going to love it. But if they're saying now I got to convey that in packaging, what should you be thinking about as the core themes for packaging?
Well, again, it all starts with the story, which then will help push you in the direction that you want to go with the packaging. So they'll all, if you do it right, you're working with a good firm, they should be able to do both of those for you. But if you look at a company like Apple, everything for many, many years has come in a white box. The size is different based on each type of product, but whether it was the original iPod or the first iPhone or the first Mac, they all came in white boxes, and that's been a tradition that consumers have learned to expect from Apple since the very first product was released. And so, um, those are the type of things that resonate with consumers. So, whatever you set, like, think about when you go to the store and you shop, you know, you have to think about the design, not just of the packaging, but of the actual cell unit. So you have to think about, like, one of the clients we used to work with was one of the first companies to put a beverage in a bullet can. Why did we go with a bullet can, or why did our client go with a bullet can? It was because when you feel it in your hand, the bullet can is one of the few um, aluminum products that you can actually hold completely in your hand, and that in itself is actually the first interaction that you have. You pick it up. How does it feel in your hand? And so there's a lot of products that have that aspect to them, but sometimes you have a product like kombucha, which, except for Rowdy Mermaid, which tastes, I think, great. I call Rowdy Mermaid the kombucha for the rest of us. A lot of the kombuchas are really bitter tasting. Some have too much alcohol, some are too sweet, but it's a very unique taste. There's no other beverage that tastes like kombucha. So, um, you know, that's a case of an item that, in spite of its kind of gnarly taste, if you will, and I know people that really love kombucha think I'm crazy, but for the rest of us, it's an acquired experience without a doubt. But that was a product that couldn't sell itself necessarily on taste because it had such a different taste. So they didn't really talk about taste. They talked about probiotics and the health benefits of the beverage overall, and the usage. So they stayed away from talking about the taste more than you might with a normal beverage.
That makes perfect sense. So now with that, we've kind of gone over a bit of, here's the product. You should consider, first get the product, get a good product in place, then get the packaging, tell the story, make sure you understand that, can well convey it. Now, the other thing that you hit on is, okay, get all of that. And let's say you have a great product, you have great packaging. And the thing that you mentioned I thought was interesting is, we talked a little bit before the podcast, was that even with all that, you can have a great product. And if your team is not in place or isn't a good team, you're still setting yourself up for a likely failure. It's not going to have a likelihood of success, and vice versa. You can not be perfect on the product or the packaging, but if you have a great team, it can still be a successful product. So what makes a difference in the team, or kind of how does that impact be able to, get a product into the stores or be able to get it on the shelves?
Well, a good experienced team has the ability to execute at both a speed and precision that other teams don't have. And, a lot of that can be that they already have previous experience, which helps them with the process of getting into the grocers. They could have great relationships. And then, you know, your sales team is different than your manufacturing team. So the best breed of companies have great manufacturing facilities that are run by really strong people with strong backgrounds that understand processes and are able to organize and set up processes that allow them to be very efficient and can produce the product at a high level, because anybody can handle one or two retailers, but as the businesses start to grow, the question is whether or not you can scale. So you need a sales team and a manufacturing team that has the understanding, knowledge, and experience to scale at a high level very quickly. Now, if you're a small company and your goal is to be at 5 million in 5 or 6 years, you're at a different growth rate, but a lot, and you can have more latitude to fudge, if you will. But most brands, like Chobani's goal, I remember meeting with them. The first thing they said is, we want to be at 1 billion in sales in 5 years. And when people would hear that, they'd be like, "That's crazy. That's next to impossible." But they did it, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that the sales team was very aggressive. The management team knew how to get the best they could possibly get out of the manufacturing team so that they could meet demand. Because if you go out and do your job in sales, but manufacturing can't deliver, then you run into a problem where you have out of stocks on the shelves, and that gets very frustrating for the retailer, And even worse, the consumer just walks away from it and just says, I'm tired of this. I bought the brand, I came back, they haven't had it in 3 to 4 weeks. So there's when you really think about it, if you do spend the time to really think about it, there's a lot of moving parts to it that you need to think about how you're going to put the pieces in place so that you can um, hit the growth spurts. Too often, what happens is people build sales plans based on other companies or business plans, excuse me, and that might not work for them. They might not have the people that can execute on it, and that's usually what happens. That's why a lot of companies stall at between that $5 to $10 million range, because they don't have the teams that can get them further. And there's nothing wrong with being at 5 to 10 million, but if your goal for your investors was to get to 50 million, you got a big problem on your hands because you don't have the ability to do that. And then if you lose, trust, if the investors lose trust in the founder, then there's the possibility of whether or not the investors think about replacing that person with a
All
different
that.
CEO.
No, that I think is definitely insightful, and it's interesting to get a bit of insight as to how that all plays out. So now, one kind of question, and this is just kind of a wrap-up question. We could go on for quite a long time, and it'd be a great conversation. But to keep it at a reasonable scope for the listeners, I do have one question. It's probably a bit out of left field. We didn't talk about it before, but I was just more curious, which is one of the things that, taking Costco specifically, that myself and my wife and the kids always used to love about Costco is you had the sampling, right? In other words, you could walk around, try a whole bunch of things, even if you weren't going to buy it. It was tasty, and occasionally you'd buy something that really was really flavorful. And so for the food and beverage industry, a lot of that, especially now with COVID and coming out of that, that's changed, and they don't do the sampling and they don't do that. And so it seems like it's changed a bit of the field. And so has that changed the field? Do you think it's ever going to come back, or how brands adjusted to that?
Well, first of all, it's back now. So
Okay. Not
it's
not back last time I went, but my wife goes much more often than I do. So take it for I haven't been for a few months.
I'm curious, what state do you live in?
Utah.
Yeah, so well, I know they're doing demos in Washington. So, and
Okay.
Utah falls under the Washington corporate office.
Hmm.
So they are doing demos up there now. So there's always possible that there's a few buildings where they're not doing them right now, but most of the Costco regions are doing demos again. In fact, Canada, which has been without demos the longest, they just announced, I think it was last week or the week before, that they're starting to do them again. So the one thing Costco won't do is, because of allergy concerns, is they won't demo any items with peanuts in them. So if you're, and that's a lot of items. So if you're, 5 years ago they would, but they had something happen, and now they want to protect, which is a good thing. Costco's always about protecting the member. Um, so it is hard if you can't demo, because demo builds a lot of excitement. I will say that in some regions it's slow. Some of the members are still a little hesitant in trying items because of COVID, but I think we're by the end of the summer. I think if things go, and I've tried to predict this before, and been wrong, and some things I've been right on, but it can get a little tricky guessing on when a virus is done. But I think we're at a stage now where things should be stable unless another variant comes. We should be in good shape, and if that's the case, then you should be enjoying samples very soon in your local Costco.
Awesome. Well, good to hear on all fronts, and I look forward to the day when I go back to Costco and I can see the samples. It may already be there, and I just haven't gone recently enough to experience it. So it gives me a good reason to go back. So,
There you go.
well, with that, as we're starting to wrap up the podcast, for the inventive expert, I always have one question I'd like to wrap up the end of each episode. So we'll jump to that now, which is, within your industry, within your area of expertise, what is one of the biggest myths that's out there?
That there you read so much about the food and beverage industry right now that, with plant based and keto and everything else that's going on, that you would think it's an easy industry to be successful in, and because there's so many new brands launching. Yes, there's a lot of access to capital that there wasn't 20 years ago, but it's a very challenging and very competitive, and grocery especially is a very expensive market to launch in. So I think one of the myths there is that it's easy to be successful in this industry, and it's very challenging, and it's even more challenging to build a brand that lasts a lifetime. So, longevity is not um, good to a lot of food and beverage brands. You see some that come on quickly, very successful in the beginning, and then they're gone.
Saying no, and that's that makes sense. I think that one is, I'm sure it's hard to be continue to stay relevant because people's tastes change. They always want to try something new. They get tired of something else, and so to be one of those brands that can be sustainable and actually not just be a bit of a flash in the pan, and also just recognizing it is a pretty competitive. I mean, I think that everybody has their idea for, hey, this would be a great food or great product, and everybody wants to try it and things would be fun and exciting, and yet to have that understanding of no, it does take a lot of work and the back end and teams and everything else to be successful is definitely a good myth to bust. So and good to know. So with that, if people are wanting to reach out, if they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out, contact you, or find out more?
Either our website at launchpadgroupusa.com or LinkedIn, or they can just call us at 650-576-8803. But any of those places, we always try and respond within 24 hours or less.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, contact you if you have a food or beverage that you're needing some expertise and some help with to get into these stores. Definitely a good resource to have. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you listeners out there, if you could leave us a review, leave us or share, click share, review, and make sure that everyone finds out about all these awesome episodes, and make sure that we can share this with expertise with as many startups and small businesses as we can. And with that, if you ever need help with patents, trademarks, or anything else with your business, certainly feel free to reach out to us at Miller IP Law. Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Jeremy, for coming on the Inventive Expert, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you.